So I'm polishing some stuff in the back. I actually have some chrome pieces, the down support bars that connect from back in there up to the frame. The cross member that goes through there I'm having polished instead of chromed, and there's also a couple of braces, lateral, I guess is what they're called, braces on each side. I'm having those polished as well. And you know, the more I've looked at this and the results I've gotten out of this polishing, I probably could have done every bit of this myself and just, you know, spent some time on it. But secrets to doing this is having all the right tools and time, which I guess that's the trade-off. I really don't have a hell of a lot of time to do a bunch of this stuff. So anyway, first thing you have to do obviously is sand everything down. Sand it smooth, whether or not you use a Dremel or what have you. This is what I found best first. Air-driven angle grinder, and you can get these kits with all sorts of different ends to them, different pieces, and basically these are called a roll-lock connector, to where these things screw off and you can just quick change them, and they're basically like a scrunch pad. So the first thing I did was went over the pieces that I wanted to polish with this. I used I guess it's a red color, which is a medium coarse. The one I used actually was this 3M right here. You could get this, I believe, at one of the home places, either Lowe's or Home Depot. Had a Dremel to get up close to some pieces. This thing was actually somewhat of an act of frustration. If you have smaller pieces to do, this is okay. But the best thing is this air-powered setup that I've actually got here. And once you get up in this thing, and I actually did some playing here, you could see what I did was use the scrunch pad and then tried to go ahead and do some polishing without the sanding, and it looks terrible. It may show shiny on this. I'll have to go back and look, but obviously it didn't take out all the sanding marks from that first step. So I've gotten on the inside of that. The other thing I did was took a grinder, ground the bolt head smooth, and you know, to where it's easier. Anything's easier to polish when it's smooth. I can tell you that much. So you don't have to take all this stuff apart. Let's see. So after I did all that, I got the inside part of this as well. Did everything on that one. It turned out perfect. The next thing you end up doing is wet sand. That's the best way of doing it. And I started basically with a I don't know, 400 or something like that, or yeah, 400, and I went up to 1,000, I believe, with this. And then after I got up to 1,000, I probably could have went to 1,500. It's not that hard to sand this aluminum, especially wet sanding. That's the way you want to go, not doing it dry. And then finally, I used this puppy with the Mother's billet polish. This stuff works great. I'll tell you, I bought this Blue Max metal polish cream. This stuff is crap. At least, you know, what I've seen and what I've done here, it didn't work for me at all. So that was a waste of some money there. The Mother stuff works great. To do both sides of this, I'm probably going to end up, and I'm using a lot of it. I'll probably use 2 containers of it. I think it's about $14 a container or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, the hardest thing I've found on top of this stuff and getting pieces is when you buy these little kits. I'm having a hard time finding this polishing, this felt wheel with the roll lock that'll go on there. So what I ended up doing was buying a file cleaner and, you know, tapped it on there very light and got that thing cleaned off. But what I'm going to do, just for grins, these things right here, they're felt pieces that go on the bottom of your furniture to keep it from scratching hardwood. It's not quite the right size here. I'm going to make another pass up at the home store and see if they've got some larger ones that'll go on, fit this. I'm certain they do. And I'm going to epoxy these puppies onto a couple of these other little wheels that I have no desire to use at all, and just to see if those things work. Because you could definitely go through 2 or 3 of those wheels if you spend enough time. Now here's another couple of things I ended up buying. I'm going to tell you were a waste, at least on these pieces, were these bonnets or these buffing wheels. They didn't do me a bit of good. So needless to say, all these are going back. I haven't used these. These feel pretty soft, but what I'm going to actually use one of these to get in between on that back side. I've got, a little bit of room here, and that's actually where I use the Dremel. But I'll tell you, I went through a ton of those little tiny 1/4-inch felt pads doing that, and it didn't have as good a results. I don't think the finish looks as well as it did using this big pad that is on the air tool. And again, I used the assortment of other abrasives initially when I tried just doing it with the Dremel. And these are fine. Using this stuff if you're doing bolts and stuff is great. It's fine depending on what type of bolts you have. There's actually a specific one used for stainless steel. And the reason I started with this is because everything underneath the hood that I've done, nuts and bolts, are all stainless steel, and it worked out fine. Larger areas like this, not so fine. So that's where, again, having a little bit of room in an air tool is great. I really should have backed this thing up onto some jack stands as well and had a little more room to work with it. Unfortunately, I pulled the cross member thing off and all that before I gave it a whole heck of a lot of thought or really got up underneath here and realized how cramped everything was. There's still enough room to work in there, but it sure would have been nice, if I'd added a jack or a rack to work it on. Or, like I said, at worst, just backing it up onto some jack stands, because using a creeper and all, it takes about 1.5 inches that, you really don't have up underneath this puppy. Another thing I tried to use, sandpaper. The orbital buffer was the first thing I had actually used on this side, and of course it knocked everything down fine, but the big deal was to wet sand. So it doesn't matter what you use. If you use that, the orbital buffer, I wouldn't use, I don't know, it just seemed to work out better with these things, to be quite honest with you. It didn't seem to destroy as much, and then the wet sanding was a key to everything anyway. If sandpaper's not an issue for you, have at it. I actually have a whole box over there. I just finished a guitar that required up to a 12,000 grit sandpaper, so I've got every grit known to man, and probably could have, if I would have been a real stickler, I could have probably done all this stuff and not ever had to even touch any of these other abrasives. That's how it worked out with the guitar anyway, but that's 2 different beasts between metal and nitrocellulose lacquer. But anyway, that's where I'm at with that. I'll get this other side done. May do what Rich and a couple of other guys have done and just polish all the exhaust all the way back up to where the curve is to clean all that up as well. But I just don't have the gumption to go ahead and do those control arms that are on the back